dollar industry. So I want you to give a round of applause to a young man who speaks and trains, who is a coach, and an individual that's changing people's lives out of Miami, Florida. His name is Andy Henriquez. Give him a tremendous round of applause. Yeah.
I am the app. I like that one.
All right.
All right. Well, first of all, let me say, happy to be with you guys here today, but I wish you guys would have warmed it up a little bit. I'm a Florida boy, so I'm not used to this cold weather. But for those of you that are note takers, you're going to take down some notes, and I want you to think about some stuff. Vince Lombardi, he's a legendary coach. And here's what Vince Lombardi said. He said that winning isn't everything, but wanting to win. Wanting to win, in spite of your past disappointments. Wanting to win, in spite of the circumstances. Wanting to win, in spite of the past disappointments. Wanting to win, in spite of that conversation going on in your mind. Wanting to win, now that's everything. So I'm going to start off by asking you a question tonight, Columbus. How many of you here really want to win? Raise your hands up high. Yes. Let me tell you something. I believe you. I believe that most of us, that we want to win when it comes to our finances. That we want to win when it comes to our relationships. That we want to win when it comes to our health. That we want to win when it comes to our goals and our dreams. But here's what I also know. That even when you want to win, even when the desire's there, that life has a way of introducing you with some unforeseen circumstances, some unforeseen challenges, some setbacks that can make you feel as if you're just not winning. How many of you know what that feels like? Raise your hands. And so here's the question. Here's the question. If most people want to win, there's a desire to win, then why is it that most people aren't winning? I want you to think about that. And so I gave it some thought. And what I realized is that one of the reasons why people aren't winning is because most people aren't in alignment with their purpose. You see, most people aren't doing what they were called to do. They're going through the motions. Yes, maybe perhaps they're working a job, and maybe perhaps they're finding a way to make a living. It was Les Brown that I heard say one time that life is not about making a living, but life is about living your making. And ultimately, if you live your making, you'll make your living. And so here I was a young boy growing up, and I did everything that I was told to do. My mom, my father, they told me, Andy, listen, go to school, get a good education, get a good job with what? Benefits? Any guys heard some of that before? Right?
Yes.
And so I did that. I went to school at Florida State University. I graduated summa cum laude. I got my master's degree in corporate accounting. I studied and prepared for the CPA exam. I passed the exam. I landed a job with one of the largest professional service firms in the world, PricewaterhouseCoopers. And after 3.5 years of working there, I realized that my life starting to follow a basic routine. You see, I was waking up every single day to the sound of an alarm clock. I was jumping out of my bed. I was getting in my car and fighting traffic to get to a job in which I knew that something was saying, Andy, there's got to be more than this. Raise your hand if you've ever been in a place in your life where you were either in a relationship, a job, some place in your life where you knew that you knew, and you were saying to yourself, there's got to be more than this. Raise your hands if you know what that feels like. So for a long time, I was having this conversation. I was contemplating leaving, and I knew, I said, it was a struggle because I was thinking about the amount of time I put in school, the amount of time I put into work. I got my undergraduate degree, my master's degree. I prepared for the CPA exam, and now with, in the world's eyes, the largest professional service firm in the world, the appearance of winning. But I wasn't winning. And so I thought about taking a chance on myself. I thought about putting myself in alignment with my purpose. And in December of 2004, became a defining moment. Kevin Costner, the actor, there's a movie. And here's what he said. He said, when the defining moment comes, either you define the moment or the moment defines you. I want you to write that down. When the defining moment comes, either you define the moment or the moment defines you. Either you define the moment, you decide to take a chance on your goals and your dreams. Either you define the moment, you decide to put yourself in alignment with that thing that you were called to do. Either you define the moment, you finally decide to face the fear and move forward towards your goals and your dreams, or the moment defines you. You become another statistic that says that 87% of people are showing up to jobs that they hate. The moment defines you. And you become a statistic that says 1 out of 3 people are unhappy and unsatisfied with their lives. In the United States alone, that's 100 million people. If you're sitting down right now, and there's someone to your right and your left, chances are one of them is unhappy with their lives. They're just, this is not it. And so here's what I realized. Somebody over there said, it's me. I think there's a couple other people that said, it's me too, but I'm not going to speak out loud. So here's what I realized. How can you win if you're not passionate about something? Because here's what I know. When you see Les Brown, when you see people in their element, they're passionate about what they're doing. You see, winning takes passion. Winning takes drive. You've got to love it. You've got to want it. And you can't get passionate about somebody else's dream. You can't get passionate about going to a job and just simply punching in. You can't get passionate about going to a job in which they're paying you just enough for you to stay, and you are putting in just enough time so they don't fire you. You can't get passionate about that. So in order to win, you've got to ask yourself, what's my passion? What is it that I was called to do? What is it that I can wake up every single day and do, and I know in my heart that this is what I was designed to do? That maybe I have to work on it. That maybe I'm going to have to get some training. Maybe I'm going to have to ask my family, hey, I need your support with this. I know this sounds crazy. If you hear Les' story, there's many people in this family that said, Les, why don't you just go get a job? Sears is still hiring. That cracks me up every time he says that. There's going to be some people around you. But sometimes you got to have the conversation and say, hey, look, listen. I've got to do this. You don't understand. I have to do this. Because I want to win. And the important part of winning, ladies and gentlemen, is making sure that you're in alignment with your purpose. I want you to look at the person on your right and your left and say, find your purpose.
Find your purpose. Yeah.
And I want you to do that with some energy, some passion, and conviction. Say, find your purpose.
Find your purpose.
All right. So not only that's, so when we talk about winning, one of the reasons why individuals don't win is, number one, they're not in alignment with their purpose. They're not in alignment with that thing they were called to do. And the other reason why many people are not winning in life is because they don't have some significant reasons, some things that make it worth it for them. Because here's what I know. Once you decide to pursue your goals and dreams, once you decide to take a chance on yourself and write that book, once you decide that, hey, you know what, I'm going to become this motivational speaker, once you decide that you're going to start your business and take your business to the next level, once you decide that you're going to go back to school and get that education, once you decide and you say to yourself that I'm going to make this marriage work, that I'm going to do something with my life, that there will be some challenges. There's going to be some unforeseen circumstances. It was written since the beginning of time. Here's what they said. In this world, you will have trials and tribulations.
That's right, man.
Not that you may. Not that there's a 50-50 possibility. No, you will. It's a part of life. So the question is, when those times come, what is it that you're going to be able to draw from? It's going to allow you to keep pushing forward. What's going to be your why when you don't want to get up and show up to this business that you've been putting in the time, the effort, you got this loan, and you're almost ashamed to talk to your spouse because you haven't been generating the income? I mean, what is it that's going to allow you to keep making phone calls and talking to people about your multi-level marketing business? And keep doing the presentations when you've been doing the presentations over and over again, making the phone calls, and yet and still your residual check is not looking very residual, if you guys know what I'm saying. What is it that's going to allow you to take a chance on yourself when everybody else is trying to talk you out of your dream? And so what we need a compelling why. You know, Nietzsche said that the man or the woman who knows the why for living can endure almost anyhow. You know, one of my best friends, his name is Eric Redd. He's a University of Florida Hall of Fame football player. He played for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, for the Cleveland Browns, and the Baltimore Ravens. And he's one of my multiple friends that were football players, so we became very good friends. And I never really thought anything big of it. To the people around, we'd go places, they asked for a signature, but I just looked at him, that's my friend. I mean, that's my very good friend. And then one day we were sitting down, I think we were watching ESPN, and ESPN started sharing some statistics. And what they said is, they said, of all these high school football players that are all over the country, in all these different states, thousands every single year, less than 3% would make it to the NFL. And then they said that even for the guys who make it to the collegiate level, who are playing at these huge colleges, like Ohio State, Florida State, University of Florida, Notre Dame, these guys that you see in the bright lights on Saturday. Ladies, even if you don't watch football, you see the stuff the men are sitting down and watching. These guys, less than 3% of them will make it to the NFL. And so after hearing that statistic, I started looking at Eric a little differently. And so one day, Eric and I are in the car, and I had to ask. Because I look at Eric, and he looks like an ordinary man. Yeah, you know, I can tell he still has, he has a good build on him. But I've met guys that were stronger than Eric, that were faster than Eric. And so I asked Eric, I said, Eric, listen, you got to tell me, man, listen, how did you make it to the NFL? How did you make it? No disrespect, I don't mean it like that. But how did you make it to the NFL? And here's what Eric told me. We were driving, and there's a place in Hollywood, Florida, a subdivision is called Carver Ranches. Eric grew up in Carver Ranches, and he drove me down this little alleyway, and he showed me this little duplex, little building, not a very nice building. And he pointed, he says, this building's been rehabbed right now. He says, you don't want to see it when I lived in it. He said, you see that little door right there? I said, yeah. He said, I grew up in that duplex right there. He said it was 500 square feet, 2 bedrooms. He said, me and my brother Mike, we shared a room. And he said, my brother Ernest and Stanley, they shared another room. And he said, for 18 years, Andy, I walked in the house for 18 years. And I saw my mom sleeping on this little green couch because she wanted to make sure that her boys could sleep in the room for 18 years. 18 years. He said, I woke up every day and I saw my mom sleeping on that couch. And he said there were some times that the couch, it started caving down so much. He said we used to go and get ripped up pieces of clothing, newspapers, and we would stuff it up underneath the couch so we could prop it up because my mom used to complain about the back pain. And he said sometimes she worked 2 or 3 jobs. And I'd come in and I could see her laying on that green couch and her legs were hanging off the end. And I see her tossing and turning. And he said, I used to just look over my mom. And he said, I used to just always say, one day I'm going to get her off that couch. He said, I wasn't sure how I was going to do it. Because growing up in the inner city, growing up in Hollywood, Florida, there wasn't that many options. He said, but I started hearing, he said, we didn't have cable in my house. But he said, I started hearing that football players make a lot of money. And he says, I remember when I first got out there on that football field. He said, when I first got out there in the football field, those guys were talking, and they were talking about how they would be signing the autographs and making the big money. And he said, every time I got on that football field, every time I got down on that path, all I thought about was getting my mom off that couch. He said, when I got hurt and I didn't want to play anymore, all I thought about was getting my mom off that couch. He said the moment that the coach said, hey, Eric Rett, you're up, he gave me that ball. He said, I made a commitment to myself. I would never walk off the field or walk on the field. He said, I ran. Every time I touched the ball, I ran it all the way to the end zone because all I wanted to do was get my mom off that couch. And he said, finally, I got a scholarship to the University of Florida. And he said, when I got there, there's 2 guys who were sitting in front of me. They were better than me. They were stronger than me. And he said, I sat down on that couch, and I didn't want to quit. And every time I thought about quitting, every time I got upset because coach didn't put me in the game, he said, I was sitting down, and all I kept saying is, I got to get my mom off that couch. And then he said, finally, one of the guys who was starting ahead of me, he got hurt. And coach looked over at him. He said, big man, it's about to be your time, man. You ready to get in the game? Eric said, the coach had no idea that I need to get my mom off that couch. He said, when that coach put me in the game, he never took me out. Eric Rett broke every single record by Emmitt Smith at the University of Florida. When Eric Rett was in school, he got graduated in 2000, and he got drafted in the NFL in 1994. He was a 2nd-round draft pick. Eric Rett got a $5 million signing bonus. The very first thing that he did was buy his mom a house in Plantation, Florida, and got her off that couch.
Yeah!
And so here's what I say to you. That maybe you don't have a mom who's laying down on the couch. But right now, here's what I know. You've got some compelling reasons. Something that's going to make it worth it for you. When you don't want to get up in the morning. When you're having those second thoughts. When the door's been slammed in your face over and over and over again. When they tell you, hey, it's not worth it. When they say, hey, man, you got to give it up. You've been trying this thing for so long. It's not going to work. You got to have some things that make it worth it for you. Why? Because the man or the woman who knows the why for living can endure almost anyhow. When you say to yourself that I want to win, I want to win, you have to have some compelling reasons. I want you to look at the person on your right and your left and say, find out what your why is.
Find out what your why is. Find out what your why is. Find out what your why is.
And so now when you really want to win, not only do you have to make sure you're in alignment with your purpose, not only do you have to make sure that you have some compelling reasons, but here's what I realized when I started thinking about why is it that most people want to win. Did you notice everybody raised their hand in the room? Everybody wants to win. But yet and still, a lot of people are not winning. So here's what I realize is the third reason why most people aren't winning in life. Most people aren't winning in life because most people are not willing to show up. They're not willing to show up in spite of the circumstances. They're not willing to show up in spite of the naysayers. They're not willing to show up after being rejected over and over again. They're not willing to show up when it's inconvenient. They're not willing to show up and fight for their goals and their dreams. And that's why I'm so happy to be with all of you here tonight. Because you're willing to show up. And winners understand this, that here's what Woody Allen said. He said that 80% of success is just simply showing up. And so I started thinking about one of the biggest winners that I know in my life. A woman that's very near and dear to me. It's my mom, Marie Henriquez. See, my mom came from the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. She came from Haiti. And when she was in Haiti, she slept outside in a little patio corridor area with her great aunt, because when my mom was born, her mom abandoned her. It was her mother's sister who came and got her and raised her the best that she could. And my mom, coming from that, she came to this country with just a little over, with $100 to her name. When friends and family gave her that money. And like most immigrants who come to this country, my mom, she was just looking for an opportunity, looking for that golden opportunity. And like most immigrants who come to this country, she was willing to do whatever it takes. Do you know, here's what they say, that immigrants are 4 times more likely to become millionaires in this country. Why? Because they value the opportunity. Why? Because they're willing to do whatever it takes. Why? Because they have a compelling reason. So my mom, when she came here, she was just looking for any opportunity. One of her first jobs was in the purse factory. She was at the purse factory and she sat there in her station, and the purses came down the assembly line. When they came to my mom, she was responsible for reversing the purses inside out to prepare them for stitching. A lot of other people didn't want that job, but my mom said, I'll take it. She did that for 8 hours a day. And when she was done doing that, she ended up making beds in different hotels. And for 23 years, she had multiple odd jobs, anything that she could, and just saved and saved and saved and was waiting for the opportunity. And finally, after 23 years of being here in this country, of waiting for her opportunity, there was a single standing commercial building that became available in Delray Beach, Florida. It's in West Palm Beach, Florida. And my mom saw the building. She said, man, that'd be a great place to open up a Haitian restaurant. And so my mom went in there and she negotiated a lease, and she opened up a Haitian cuisine, and she had her friends and family going around and telling people in the neighborhood. And after about 2 years of having this restaurant open, and people are starting to come in, they're buying food, and business is starting to pick up, my mom's at the house and she hears a knock on the door. When she opens up the door, there's a guy that's standing on the side door, and he hands her a bunch of legal documents. My mom takes the documents and she starts flipping through the documents, and she's trying to make sense of it. And the best that she could, she realized that this property, that she's been paying the landlord every single month on time for 2 years. This property, that all her life she's been waiting for this opportunity. This property, which allows her to provide for her 2 sons, that this property is going into foreclosure. And so my mom's devastated. And she starts thinking, now, what am I going to do? I've been waiting all my life for this opportunity. I have all of my savings in this business. This is how I take care of my 2 little boys. And so my mom, not knowing any better, she just figured, hey, the least I could do is make a phone call. There's a telephone number on there, and she put in a phone call, and my mom has a very heavy accent, and she called up the lady, and she said, hello, this is Marie. I'm calling about 540 West Atlantic. I don't understand. I've been paying the rent every month. I've been paying the rent. I pay the landlord every single month on time. And when I look at the paper, it says the property is going to foreclosure. I don't understand. And the lady said, oh, Marie, we're so sorry. She said, listen, Marie, even though you've been paying the rent every single month on time, the landlord, he has a mortgage on this property. He hasn't been paying the mortgage. The mortgage is attached to the property. And because he hasn't been paying the mortgage, we can foreclose on the property. My mom said, I don't understand. I pay the landlord every single month. And my mom said, and this is probably my mom just reaching and figuring, I gotta find a way. And so my mom asked the lady, she said, do you think that there's any way that maybe she could just go to the foreclosure sale, find whatever big heavyweight investor is going to buy this property, and convince them if she could just stay in the property and continue renting it? And so my mom asked this lady that, and unfortunately, this is what the lady said to my mom. It's probably not even worth you showing up. But let me tell you something. Like many of you, my mom wanted to win. And she understood that in order to win, you got to show up. And so my mom said, at a minimum, I'm going to go to this foreclosure sale. So she got in her car 30 days later, and she goes to this foreclosure sale. And when she gets to the foreclosure sale, she's expecting to find a room full of investors just like this. And to her surprise, when she gets there, there's only one person there. There's one person there. And before my mom can sort of make sense of what's going on, the auctioneer, he starts, he says, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to start the bidding process on 540 West Atlantic Avenue. If you're here to bid on the property, please raise your hand. And naturally, the representative from the bank, she raised her hand. And my mom, who had no intentions on bidding on the property, who doesn't even know how this works, who don't have no money, okay? In an act of faith, she raised her hand. You know, Martin Luther King said that faith is taking the first step, even when you can't see the entire staircase. Amen. And so the auctioneer continues. He says, very well, we're about to start the bidding on 540 West Atlantic Avenue. We're going to start the bid on 540 West Atlantic Avenue. We're going to start the bidding process at $30,000. The representative from the bank, of course, naturally raised her hand and said $30,000. Now my mom's over here excited, caught in the emotions and stuff, doesn't have the money anyway. She's talking about $35,000. The representative from the bank's looking at my mom like, this lady's crazy, going up by $5,000. She looks over at my mom and says, $36,000. My mom's a fast learner. She catching on now, okay? She goes, $37,000. The bank representative says, $38,000. My mom says, $39,000. The bank representative says, $40,000. My mom says, $41,000. This goes on and on and on and on, and finally they get to the bank representative. She says $74,000, and my mom says $75,000. The bank representative says $76,000, and now my mom, she's got a little attitude. She got some confidence now. She like, I don't have this money anywhere. So my mom looks over at the lady, she like, $76,500. But something different happened this time. The representative from the bank was standing over here, and she was holding the clipboard. She raised the paper, and she just put it down. The auctioneer now is waiting on a bid. So he says, $76,500 going once? No answer. He says, $76,500 going twice? No answer. He says, $76,500 sold to the woman who is willing to show up. To the woman who is willing to show up in spite of the circumstances. To the woman who is willing to show up even though English was not her first language. To the woman who is willing to show up despite the fact that she didn't know where she was going to get the money from. At that time, they gave you 30 days to come up with the money. In the next 30 days, my mom would pick up the phone. She would call up every family member, every friend, and share that story. She was 3 days away from meeting the deadline. She was still $30,000 short. And her phone rang. And it was her friend Yvonne. And Yvonne said, Mary, she said, me and my husband, we had $30,000 saved up. It took us 10 years to save this money. We thought about this. And we want to lend you the money. We believe in you. We want you to win. And we know you'll pay us back. Mom said, thank you. In the next 3 days, my mom would go to the banks and get the cashier's checks. And that day, she went from being the tenant to being the landlord. And the reason why, you go ahead and applaud that, absolutely. And like I said, like many of you, all she wanted to do was win. But here's what she knew. That in order to win, you gotta be willing to show up. You gotta show up in spite of the circumstances. You gotta show up even when that internal conversation is trying to talk you out of it. You've got to show up even when the bank account does not look the way that you want it to. You've got to show up even after being rejected over and over again. You've got to show up no matter what they say. You've got to show up for your life. Why? Why do you have to show up, Andy?
No one else will.
You got to show up for your life, ladies and gentlemen. Because if you don't, no one else will.
There it is.
Give yourselves a round of applause. Show up for your life. I'm going to bring the master back up.
Come on, you can do better than that. Come on, Henriquez.
Yeah.
How many of you will remember that story? Raise your hand, please. Is that a powerful story? Yeah. How many like to learn how to tell a story like that? Raise your hands. Very good. Here's something we're going to do because time got away from us. What time is it now?
8:30.
It's 8:36. My daughter just told me we're supposed to end at 8:30.